What is a travel nurse agency and what are they responsible for? And more importantly, how do I make sure that I find a good one? Hi, my name's John. I've been in the travel nursing game for about 5 years now, and I've taken over 15 different contracts all around the country. Welcome to Travel Healthcare 101, where we are breaking down all of the steps from taking your very first contract to the end of that contract. Now, while this is mainly geared towards travel nursing, it certainly can apply to all sorts of different allied health professionals. If you missed our first 2 videos in the series, make sure you go back and watch them. They are full of information. Today, we're diving in deeper into what a travel nursing agency does behind the scenes, some red flags to watch out for, and how to find a good one to get you started on the right foot. Finding an agency is most often a new traveler's very first step in this whole process. An agency's primary job is really simple. It's basically sourcing nurses or other healthcare professionals and matching them up with the jobs that the facilities are needing filled. But there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes and the structure of them, and it's good for you to understand how those work. There's many working parts to this puzzle, so let's break it down. Let's start at the top, the leadership, the C-suite, the CEO, COO, CNO, you guys know what I'm talking about, the suits, or maybe not the suits, depending on the agency. Leadership is going to be responsible for strategic planning, and that also includes like growth and change, the ebb and the flow of the travel nursing market. We all know that it can change fairly quickly. We had the crazy rise with the pandemic, and now we're kind of in endemic time, so things have changed a little bit. The leadership for an agency is going to be responsible for navigating those waters. Also, operational management. That's the day-to-day stuff. Policies, procedures, labor laws, and all that good stuff. All right, the client managers are another key part of what an agency is, and these guys do a lot of significant work. When I say client managers, I'm actually not talking about the nurses or the allied health staff that they work with. I'm actually talking about the facilities. So the clients for a travel nursing agency are technically like the hospitals or the health systems. Client managers help work with those relations. They generally have like a contact person within the healthcare facility, and they go back and forth to work with developing continuous relationships with their staffing agencies. And also contract resolutions. They may get involved whenever there's difficulties or problems with a travel nurse. They are a key player in developing that continuous relationship with the healthcare facilities and whatever agency you're working with. Compliance is another major part of a travel nursing agency. The compliance specialists make sure that all of the stuff that you need for your very first day is already in place and the facility has all of that. That's going to include things like verification of your nursing license, making sure that you have all the required certifications needed to do your job, and all of the background checks and all the vaccinations and all those other things are in order for you to be able to start right off the bat. Compliance also can help tailor the different things that certain facilities may require that other ones don't. Like perhaps there's an EKG test that you have to pass before being able to work at that facility. They're the ones that will kind of negotiate that for you too and kind of set it up so all of that stuff is done and ready for you. The marketing and branding team. These guys are responsible for getting all of the marketing out there. It's going to be digital content. It's going to be, print and media and, swag. Then probably another one that's going to be very near and dear to all of our hearts is accounting and payroll. Now, accounting and payroll is going to be all about making sure as the travelers that we get our checks, right? That's part of their job. They're also going to be responsible for making sure that everybody else involved with working in the agency gets paid and that kind of thing too. They make sure to follow the market trends. They provide budgetary things to the executive suite. They're also responsible for benefits and tax compliance. So a very important piece of the agency puzzle. Finally, and guys, I'm probably leaving a few other things out. I know that there's things like housing, and every agency is going to be a little bit different on how they're built. There's going to be, I've listed like major things that everyone's going to have, but there's going to be subcategories like people that manage housing for travel nurses and benefits and other things like that. There's lots of different little pieces of the puzzle to make it all come together to form a great agency. But the true lifeblood resides, in my opinion, in the recruiters and the relationships that those recruiters develop with their travel nurses. Because without travel nurses, there'd be no point in an agency. And of course, there's trainers for those recruiters, just like anything else, that everyone needs to be trained on how to do the job the best that they can. And so when I say recruiters, I'm talking about the umbrella that incorporates all of that and everyone that has to do and deal with training of new people coming on board. Now, because the recruiters are so important, you'll have to stick around till next week where we're gonna talk more about the recruiter and all the relationships and all the things that come with having a great one and what to look and watch out for. Because this whole travel thing can get complicated, there's another aspect that we have to talk about. We're gonna touch briefly on it because it muddies the waters a little bit, and that's contracts and vendors. We'll talk more about contracts when it comes time to like submit and those kind of things here in a couple of videos later. But for now, vendors are important because they're like a third-party access to all of this. So far, the way I've presented it is you've got your healthcare facilities, your hospitals, and you've got your travel nurse agencies, right? Now, a lot of times you'll have a direct relationship between those with client managers working directly with someone from the facility. That's a direct connection. You pair the agency and they pair you with contracts at a facility. The vendor is responsible with pairing with facilities to get contracts, and then they shop those contracts out to a bunch of different agencies. So instead, if you've got your agency that you like has to go through the vendor to get to the facility contract. They do this and the facilities like it because it standardizes everything and gives them a broader spectrum of nurses and travelers to be able to choose from. It has good and bad things for nurses. It's maybe not so great because whenever you're having an issue, your recruiter, who's always your number one go-to person, can't directly contact the facility. They have to contact the vendor first, then the vendor speaks to the facility. So there's a middleman that you kind of have to navigate around. But it does create competition, both for nurses and for travel nurse agencies. So it's good for the patient. So hopefully they're gonna get the best nurse that that facility can get. In some ways they're good, in some ways they're bad. Mostly they're just kind of out there and you need to know about it. All right, let's get to the meat of this whole thing, and that's making sure that you're finding a good agency out there. There are lots of them to choose from. Like literally there are hundreds to choose from. So it can be a little daunting trying to figure out what's a good one and what's a bad one. I can tell you right off the bat, one of the best things you can do is go to someplace like Highway Hypodermics and look up their top 10 agency list. And those are gonna be obviously the top 10 agencies. Now this list is comprised and voted for by travel nurses only. They are very strict on who they let come in, how the voting works, and they've even gone so far as to ban a few agencies for trying to go in and sneak positive fake reviews. It's a really good place for an honest and non-biased list of really who the top agencies are. Now that changes, but there's a few on there that have been there for quite some time, and those are the ones you want to look at. Just like everything else, there are some bad apples out there that you're gonna have to watch out for. I feel like it's worth saying that sometimes the biggest thing you'll notice is pay difference. And some newer agencies are gonna offer higher paying contracts than some of the ones that have been around for a while because they do that to try to bring nurses in and grow. That's a very common tactic, so just be aware of it. That's great because you might make more money with that agency, but you also have a newer agency that may not know the ropes as well as an experienced one. So keep that in mind. There's also a couple red flags that you really need to watch out for right off the bat, and I'm just gonna list a few here. Number one, paid fees. You're the travel nurse signing up with the agency. There is no reason you should ever have to pay them any fees to be able to work with them. Poor compliance management is also a huge one. The compliance department is so important because they also work as a shield to help you make sure that no mistakes happen. You don't want to get involved with something or working at a facility somewhere where you're supposed to have a specific certification and all of a sudden you don't, but then you're working there and your license gets to be on the line. So if you're working with a compliance department and all of a sudden they're like losing your documents or they're not sure of what's needed or something like that, and you're constantly being emailed back and forth or contacted to try to supply more things than you're not sure about and they can't give you solid answers of why, that's a big red flag. One of the ones for me that's a red flag is being passed around to different recruiters over and over. If you do one assignment, you've got one recruiter, and then the next assignment, you've got another recruiter, that's kind of odd. Ideally, you want to find a recruiter that you can develop a great relationship with. That's what the whole thing is about. Another one, and it may sound silly, is antiquated technology. You know, that's 2023. When I first started this gig, we were filling out timesheets, having managers sign them, and had to fax them. Come on, don't we have an app for that? The last two are the big ones, and that's going to be a screw up of your pay. If you're working with an agency and all of a sudden you notice that like your paycheck is considerably shorter than it should be, or they've lost hours, or they're not keeping track of everything appropriately, that is a major red flag. And finally, the last one I'd like to say is not having your back. If you get into a pinch at work and you feel like things aren't safe, or maybe something's going on, or there's something they're having you do that's not in your contract, it's definitely like something that shouldn't be done that way. Maybe it's staffing ratios. Maybe it's floating to different departments that are totally outside of your scope of practice. Who knows what it is? But if you call up your recruiter, who should always be your first point of contact, and say, hey, look, I've got a problem. How can we resolve this? And they don't have your back at all and they expect you just to do the contract, that's a problem. What connects us to all of this stuff with the agencies is the relationship that we're hopefully able to develop with our recruiters. We're going to devote an entire video just dedicated to building that relationship, what to look for in a great recruiter, some more red flags to watch out for, and just generally what you want from that relationship. Look forward to it, and we'll see you soon.